You're standing by the ocean, and you look down into the water, but it's murky, cloudy, and a little bit sour on the nose. The schools of fish you used to see darting past look sickly, weak, and they're riddled with parasites. The coral reefs are overgrown with algae, suffocating. The seagrass meadows, one of the planet's most powerful carbon sinks, are stripped bare. And the ocean warms. It feels different on your skin, no longer refreshing. Would you want to swim in this ocean, eat fish from this ocean, or even live near it? This is the likely reality of an ocean without sharks and rays. Yes, sharks might scare you. We've all seen the media stories and watched the movies. And when shark incidents occur, their rarity can shock us. I could quote the statistics, tell you that falling coconuts, road accidents, and even vending machines cause more incidents per year than sharks do. Yet the media amplifies every encounter, turning rarity into spectacle. So yes, sharks might scare you, but an ocean without them should terrify you far more. You see, we have a problem. Over 1/3 of all shark and ray species are threatened with extinction worldwide. That's over 400 species potentially going extinct. So our oceans without the top levels of the food chain are not as inconceivable as it sounds. In fact, it's already happening. And this really makes me worried. In the Indian Ocean, declining numbers of sharks and rays have been linked to the functional extinction of seagrass meadows over large areas. Without sharks and rays, the balance of life changes. Their prey becomes lawnmowers, overgrazing the ocean floor until there is little left. Here in Australia, our very own coral reefs are under threat from declining numbers of sharks and rays. When sharks aren't around, their prey behave differently, feeding and moving in ways that never would before. And in their absence, crown-of-thorns starfish are ravaging the corals. Take the sharks and rays away, and the ocean collapses. Now, when I say I'm a marine biologist, you may imagine me dramatically diving into the water, catching sharks and rays with my bare hands, which does sound kind of ridiculous. Although for reference, here I am, holding a shark with my bare hands. And as you can see, I've clearly been in this field for quite some time now. But in all seriousness, I do jump into the water and I do catch these animals with my hands. Just not the ones you're picturing. There's more to sharks than the high-order predators you're imagining. There are others that are overlooked and underappreciated. And these are the mesopredators. They're consumed by larger animals, yet they're also predators themselves. Therefore, they play a key role in balancing the food web. And these are the sharks and rays that you probably never hear about. They're the unsung heroes. They may not headline the movies, but they keep the ocean story alive. There are upwards of 50 species of sharks and rays in Port Phillip Bay alone. And this is where I work out of, in Victoria, Australia. 50 species, just in this one small bay. And most of them are mesopredators. And even in these waters, these species are incredibly diverse. I spend a lot of my time with the southern fiddler ray. You may know them as the banjo shark. Now, these are a fantastic example of a mesopredator. They're a type of what we call shark-like rays. This is because they have the flat shape of a stingray, but no barb or stinger. Instead, they have 2 dorsal fins, which is much like that of a shark. Now, these rays are quite common in Port Phillip Bay, but we don't even know how they use it. We don't know how they move. We don't know what they like to eat. And we don't even know where they go to give birth. So yes, I do jump into the water and catch these animals, but when I catch them, I place a tracker on them so I can see where they're going. And this tracker is no larger than your index finger, yet it can allow us to track these animals for up to 10 years. We've started to deploy underwater listening stations along the coast. And when a tagged shark or ray swims within range of one of these, their tag will ping, And the underwater listening station will hear and record that. And from this, we can track their movements. Now, the more of these we can deploy, the bigger the picture we can paint. From the smallest muscle biopsy, we are able to see what these animals are eating. And that sounds crazy, but it's true. You've probably heard the saying, "You are what you eat." Well, this method of researching their diet quite literally embodies this. When a shark or ray consumes a fish, for example, certain biological markers from that fish can assimilate into the muscle of the shark or ray. So when we sample that muscle, we run it through some fancy machines and we can see what they've been eating. Hence, you are what you eat. And with this kind of data, we can start to answer those big questions, such as, well, where are they going? And what are they eating? And what are their roles in the marine ecosystem? And it's important we have the answers to these questions because they can help us identify critical habitats and areas for sharks and rays, particularly as our climate continues to change. Now, through this research, I'm already starting to see areas that I think may be shark and ray nurseries. And you may be watching this thinking, look, that's great, but what does this have to do with me? Well, we depend on sharks and rays way more than we realise. They regulate the functioning of the ocean. Over 3 billion people rely on marine and coastal resources for their livelihoods. There are entire communities whose survival depends on the health of our oceans. 50% of the air we breathe comes from the ocean. Tiny, microscopic marine plants. That's every second breath you take right here in this room. So sure, you just might not care about sharks, or coral reefs, or the southern fiddler ray, or even climate change. But if you care about breathing, eating, or creating a livelihood, if you care about living on a planet that can give you all of these things, well, then you already do. It's probably no surprise that overfishing is the #1 threat to sharks and rays globally. Yet, some of our everyday actions can also decide the fate of the ecosystem that sustains us. Pet food, supplements, and skincare. Yes, there are sharks in your moisturiser. And yes, there are sharks in some of the most popular health supplements. Now, these are only a few examples of how shark products are in our everyday lives, yet they can be some of the most shocking. And I may do this for a living, but you have just as much influence as me on whether our oceans continue to be a place to play, swim, and ensure our planet's survival. We want to conserve our oceans so that our oceans can conserve us through coexistence. So let's bring this back to where we started. When we stand by the ocean, we look out and we do see rich waters, healthy schools of fish, thick seagrass meadows. We breathe the air. And it's not there by chance. It's from the presence of sharks and rays. Thank you.